I spent £3 on this tool and it has saved me so many headaches. Even if you've been sewing for a couple of years, you might not have heard of any of these tools that I'm going to talk about today. I've personally found them really useful in my sewing process and I wanted to share them to see what you think about them. I'm going to start with the newest tool that I've tried, and that is this tool right here. This is the buttoneer tool and it's something I tried as part of a collaboration on Instagram. It's a really useful tool to help people attach buttons without having to sew them with thread. You can see here that when I place the button over the needles, it kind of spreads open, so it can work with multiple different sizes of buttons. And then you literally just have to press the trigger and that's going to release the fastener into the fabric. So if I just show you what the fasteners look like, they look like this. And they are plastic and you basically insert them into the tool and that's what the fastener is to attach the button to fabric. Now I personally find buttons really tedious to sew, but I know they are really enjoyable and therapeutic for lots of people in their sewing process. I think this tool is specifically aimed at people that don't want to spend lots of time attaching buttons, or if you find kind of threading a needle and having to actually sew buttons too difficult, using a tool like this will be really helpful if you struggle with that sort of technique. I've personally used this tool several times to attach buttons to fabric and I find it really easy to use. It's very intuitive and obviously it's nice and small and compact. So if you're ever in a situation where you have to quickly attach buttons to something and you don't have a sewing kit with you, this is a really useful tool. Obviously sewing is meant to be more sustainable than buying clothes, and I am aware that this tool uses plastic as a fastener instead of thread, but I imagine it's the exact same tactic that's used when you're applying clothing tags to clothing. So if you're someone that doesn't like the idea of using plastic to attach buttons, obviously this might not be a tool for you, but if you want something really simple to use, I personally really recommend this tool because it really has made sewing buttons so much quicker. I'll make sure to leave a link to this tool in the description box below, as well as everything else that I'm going to share in this video. So the next tool that I'm going to talk about today is this tool right here, and this is a bobbin and thread organizer. Hands up if you are like me and you literally just have all your bobbins and thread just thrown into a drawer. It gets so messy, and if I just show you a before and an after of what this tool has made a difference to my drawers and organization, it is honestly so massive. So this is what it looks like without anything on it, and this is what the organizer looks like with the thread and the bobbin attached together. Also, when you are actually attaching the bobbin, obviously this thread can go and roll around because there's nothing to secure it, but when you're trying to wrap around thread around the main spool, you can actually use the end of the thread and put it into the groove of this section and it will hold it in place. These are really inexpensive. I think I got these for £3 for like a pack of 20. They come in lots of different shapes and sizes. I personally have been keeping them within a tub as well to help them not kind of roll over all around the drawer. And I also just really like the fact that the bobbin and the thread are together. So when I'm starting a sewing project, I can just get this out and know that I'm ready to start sewing. So I'm just going to put one on and show you how I do it. And basically what you do is make sure that you try to wrap the thread around the bobbin as much as you can. You push really hard and that goes in the top. You squeeze the other end and push the thread through. You know what I was talking about before, the fact that the thread on the bobbin is just going to be loose because there's nothing to keep it in shape. I wish there was something where you could put that in some sort of groove, but that is what that looks like. It's so simple and easy to use, and it's made such a big difference to my sewing organization. So another life-saving tool that has honestly saved me so many crying sessions is this magnetic pin cushion right here. As you can see, I've put all my pins on there and I've also put some safety pins, basically anything that's magnetic. And if I turn it under, you can see nothing's fallen on the floor. How many times do you think I have literally knocked all my pins on the floor because I've just stored them in something that isn't magnetic, and I've had to pick up every single one while stabbing myself? Honestly, I can't even count. And since I've got this tool, I don't know why I didn't get it before, because it's made such a difference in making sure that just doesn't happen. So if you sew and you still have a container for your pins that once it falls over, it goes everywhere, just buy one of these. It will save you so many headaches, and it's also just so much easier to pick up and move around when you're sewing. So this one is from Prim, and it has this really cute blue pattern all around with dots. It just looks really nice in photos and also when I'm using it in my content. And then the back is just plain. I can also shake it and nothing falls to the floor. Obviously, you don't shake it super vigorously, but even shaking it like that, it is really secure. Such a simple, inexpensive tool that will really change your sewing process if you constantly accidentally knock your pins on the floor. So the next tool that I want to talk about is something that I've only been using recently, and before I used to use a pencil or something sharp and pointy to do this method, but what I use now is this thing right here, and it's a corner and edge sharpener. So what that means is when you're trying to turn out really sharp corners, you've just sewn a seam and you have to turn it right side out, using a tool like this will just make you get a really nice crisp and clean finish at the corner. It is plastic, but the edge isn't super sharp, so it won't actually cut through your fabric when you're using it to actually push the corners out. I use this on everything, literally. If I've been sewing any scrunchies, anything that just involves me having to push corners out. So if you're sewing things like collars where you need a nice sharp corner at the edge of the collar, this is going to make such a difference if you've just been using a pencil or something like that to do that. I actually used to use the edge of scissors to try and turn my corners out, and obviously how many times did I accidentally push too hard and it just cut through the fabric? So many times. But this hasn't happened yet with this tool. Obviously the edge isn't sharp like I mentioned, but it is still quite pointy, so maybe don't put too much pressure on it in case that does happen. That hasn't happened for me, and I can't imagine it happening with a tool like this. You can get these in all types of colors and all types of materials as well. I personally just chose a blue one because it was on offer at the time on Amazon. Again, such a simple tool that you wouldn't think changes your sewing process so much, but it really does, because it just makes everything so much easier. I know I'm going to get a nice sharp corner when I use this, and I won't have to use my fingers to pull it out so much. So my last sewing tool that I want to share today that has really made such a difference in my sewing process has got to be my iron and ironing board. I know how boring that sounds, but basically before this, I just had one of those like small ironing boards from IKEA where you had to use it on the floor or on a table. And now I have this really big ironing board that's adjustable, so I can actually lift it up and change the height of the board, the way that it sits. And that just means that I can use it standing up, or if I'm really lazy, I can actually use it sitting down. Now, I actually posted about this on my Instagram, and a lot of you recommended that I have to be really careful in summer because they've actually been sitting down with their ironing board over their knees, because obviously it's adjustable and you can put your legs underneath it, and they've accidentally used too much steam and they've actually burnt their legs because the steam has gone through the ironing board and touched their legs from where they're sitting underneath it. So definitely a lesson that I've learned. Thankfully that hasn't happened to me, but I can't believe how much I overlooked why having an ironing board that's adjustable is useful. And then to go along with that, you do also want a really good iron. This one I actually bought in Germany because I used to live there, and now I actually need a new one because I'm still using an EU plug converter to the UK, so I need to get a new one that's actually just got a UK plug. But I really like how this one actually performs. It steams really well, it presses really well, and it holds a nice amount of water for me to use. It also is cordless, which I really like, so I can actually pick up the iron and use it without having to have a cord wrapped around my hand when I'm using it. If you actually have any iron recommendations that I should buy, definitely let me know, because I am looking for a new one because I do need one with an actual UK plug. I've seen so many people use one of those proper steam irons, but I personally don't want anything that's too heavy, and I do want something that's cordless because I've just found that has made my sewing process so much easier. I know it's a boring one, but it's actually made such a difference because obviously you need to iron in so many steps when you're sewing before you start cutting out your fabric, when you're going through the process of making something, and then also the final iron that you do of your garment once it's made. So it's really important that you do invest in a nice ironing board and a nice iron just to make the whole process of sewing so much easier. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found these 5 tools really interesting and useful to learn about. Let me know if you've tried any of them down below in the comments. If I had to pick my favorite, I'm going to go with the magnetic pin cushion because it's something I use every single time I sew, and I have so many flashbacks of just throwing pins all over the floor by accident, and that just doesn't happen now that I have this tool. As I mentioned earlier, you can find all the links to all the tools I talked about in this video in the description box below. Let me know which one of these is your favorite, and I'll see you in the next one.